One of the most recognizable names to come out of the First World War was that of Alvin York of the 328th Infantry Regiment, a humble soldier from the backwoods of Tennessee who was said to have nearly single-handedly captured 132 Germans, earning the nation's highest military honor, the Congressional Medal of Honor. Hollywood loved the story so much they made it into a movie in 1941 starring Gary Cooper. So much has been written about York's events, but we know from our history that while parts of the York story are true, he certainly didn't do it alone. And we continue to learn about the other men involved in that episode that took place on October 8th, 1918, that earned York his high recognition. After York and his men captured the Germans, they didn't simply pick up their gear and call it a day. The fighting continued along the front, a fight involving other men of the 328th Infantry Regiment, including a young man from Trafford, Pennsylvania. And while York's story certainly highlighted the heroic successes of the regiment, the fighting during those days in the Meuse Argonne were absolutely brutal. In fact, in just 3 days, from October 7th to October 9th, division records show us that the 328th Regiment had 88 men killed, 35 died of their wounds, and another 518 wounded in the action. And this is where we find our young man from Trafford, smack in the middle of the fighting that would later include him in the ranks of the severely wounded. Dean Richard Clifford was born in Ligonier in 1895. His family moved to Trafford, where his father found work in the Westinghouse foundry. Dean himself would find work with the Pennsylvania Railroad. The Cliffords lived at 505 Duquesne Avenue, the home located right next to the Henderson Garage, what most of us remember as the old Trafford Motors building. From the 328th Infantry Regiment history that involved York and his comrades capturing the Germans, we know the famous episode took place on Hill 223, just north of the village of Chateau Chéri. That same day, Clifford's company was ordered to move to a position on Hill 180, less than a mile from where York was battling. The company's objective that day was to take the village of Cornay, and while we don't know the specifics, it was during this mission that Clifford was severely wounded, taking shrapnel to his left thigh, thus taking him out of the battle. Among the men of the 328th killed on this day was a young man from South Pittsburgh, Tennessee, named Dallas Houghton, a member of Clifford's company. We don't know the details of his death, but he was buried in an isolated grave near the headquarters position on the hill. In addition to Houghton, others killed during the fight were buried in a temporary gravesite just south of the village. In the background, you can see the remnants of the church that had been partially destroyed. We must not forget their combined efforts that would ultimately lead to an Allied victory. When Clifford returned to Trafford in 1919 after the war, he was invited to the armistice celebration that took place inside the old Trafford Inn. You can find his name on the World War I bronze memorial in the park. In 1926, Clifford was appointed by President Calvin Coolidge to be postmaster of the US Post Office in Trafford. In 1932, he was appointed as commander of the Trafford American Legion, Post 331. The Legion was then holding their meetings inside the former North Trafford Station. That same year, in recognition of the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, the War Department revived the use of the Purple Heart Medal, including recognition for those wounded during the First War, thus acknowledging Clifford's meritorious service that resulted in his injuries, authorizing him to wear the Purple Heart. As we approach Veterans Day and the anniversary of the armistice, we remember those who participated in the Battle of the Meuse Argonne, and in particular, we remember Dean Richard Clifford, a recognized leader as both a soldier and a civilian.